Hello, it's Dawn Michelle and welcome back to my channel. Today I thought we'd chat a little bit about the decks and my tarot plans for 2024. So usually I do this like sort of recap thing where I look back at the decks that I said I was going to work with in the last year and I kind of reflect on whether or not I did those things. I so don't feel like doing that this year. I'm over 2023. I have so far moved on and moved beyond that I just don't want to do any more reflective work around it. So today we're just going to solely focus on just a very small selection of decks that I want to work with in 2024 for very specific things. These are decks that are like outside of my normal just monthly practice. These are things that are going to be longer practices or particular studies that I want to work on throughout the year. And then I thought we'd talk a little bit about tarot journaling because that's going to be changing for me in 2024 as well. So my apologies to my members because they will have seen and heard a lot of this stuff before. However, I have refined a little bit since then. So I thought I would just share a little recap of this. So the main thing, I guess, that I kind of want to get into in 2024, and this again is outside of my normal monthly tarot practice. So in my membership, we're doing this big tarot adventure all throughout 2024, which is really exciting. And that is actually going to be my primary focus. I'm not going to get into the details of that here because that's really not the scope of this video. I talked about it quite a bit in my December wrap up if you're interested in finding out more about it. So that's going to be like my main focus for the year. And that's definitely the thing that I'm going to put the majority of my tarot practice efforts into. But there are a few things that I really would like to at least dip my toes into in 2024, and alchemy is one of them. So I got kind of interested in the idea of alchemy after working with the Alchemical Oracle, the Wild Unknown alchemy deck, and it kind of just piqued my interest. So I picked up this deck, the Alchemical Visions Tarot. This is a gorgeous collage deck, but it is gigantic. I think the cards are like 4x6 maybe. They are almost as big. Let me just see. This is a 4x6 journal, so they're bigger than that. This I think is a 5x7. Oh yeah, so they're 5x7. They are huge. But I picked this up because I want to dip my toes a little bit into alchemy. I'll just flip through the cards here. It's a gorgeous collage deck. I love the artwork. I do love that it's gigantic so that I can really see what's going on. It's going to be a study deck for me. I don't know if I will actually use it for readings because it is quite large. Like, it takes up the majority of my reading space. Yes, I could move some stuff, of course, but it does, like, even with the stuff off the table, it still takes up the majority of the table itself. And I don't know how that would actually work in readings for me. I think it would be just a definite one card pull thing. And if I were going to pull other cards, it would be maybe other tarot decks or other oracle decks. But that's not really why I bought this deck. I bought this deck to be a study tool, to help me learn alchemy through the lens of tarot, because generally, tarot is a system I know really well. Generally, when I'm learning something new, if I could wrap it into tarot, it helps me to understand it. Like, if I can understand the alchemy that's going on in the Judgment card as it relates to judgment here, or as it relates to the world, then it helps me make a connection to it in my brain. So that's why I tend to like to wrap some of these things that I'm interested in learning into the tarot, or work with it in alignment with tarot, because I feel like this is a language I understand. And so it's kind of creating a framework. So rather than just jumping in to the idea of alchemy on the whole, right, I'm going to dip my toes in by learning first or working first with the alchemy that we see in tarot, because I think that will help me have a better understanding of the process. I already have that tarot lens, so if I can see how those things relate to each other, then that's going to be, I think, really helpful for me. Also, the artwork is gorgeous. Let's just kind of skip around a little bit because I don't want to spend all my time flipping through this one deck, but the artwork is stunning. I love it. And I do love that it's big for the sense that I can really dive into these images and hopefully be able to see really well what's going on, and look at the symbols and use the guidebook to see what they mean. So let's just switch gears here and go ahead and take a quick peek at the guidebook just so that we can see what we're getting into. So it's the Alchemical Visions Tarot, 78 Keys to Unlock Your Subconscious Mind. And it does go into detail about each of the cards, which is wonderful. We have an introduction. And then I think, yeah, it goes right into the cards. And it does talk about what we see in the cards and in the deck. So I think that's going to be really helpful for me in terms of just kind of dipping my toes into alchemy. So my plan is maybe to work through it through, you know, the Fool's Journey. This deck actually starts with the Magician and ends with the Fool, which is really interesting. And I might do it through that sense, or I might just like shuffle and randomly, or attempt to shuffle, and then randomly pull a card every few days. This is not something that I intend to do daily, just every few days, maybe every week, maybe every few weeks, depending on how long it takes me, and really just dive into what I see in the card and what I find in the book. And then I do have a few other resources that I'll be dipping in and out of to kind of help me flesh out that experience. So in addition to working with this deck, I will probably continue to work with my Wild Unknown Alchemy deck. I'm not going to bring that out here because I discussed that deck in several videos now, in particular in the video I did talking about my favorite decks that I worked with in 2023, but that will probably one that I will also bring into this practice because it's one I'm currently working with in terms of writing as well. So I'll pull in a little bit of that alchemy with it, but this is going to be my main alchemical study deck along with a few other books that I've gotten. However, this is not going to be like a structured study. It's just something that I'm going to do when I feel called to and when I feel like I'm ready to dive in. I didn't buy it a fancy journal. I just have like a plain notebook so that I don't feel like I need to do anything special with it. I can just really focus on the information and let this be something that I just slowly learn over the course of the year. So another deck that I'm going to be working with very slowly and in kind of a similar fashion to the alchemical deck and the alchemical studies is the Nameless One Tarot and Oracle. So I picked this deck up because I was really curious about the whole experience of the deck. I actually kind of fell in love with the artwork once I finally started watching like a few proper walkthroughs, because the first few times I saw this deck, I was like, it's pretty, but I don't get it. Like, I don't work with sigils. There's no titles. It doesn't really make any sort of a connection for me. But something about it just kind of kept calling me back, and I ended up watching like a couple of really detailed, beautiful walkthroughs on it, and the artwork is what sold me. And I'm curious about the sigils. So now this has become a sort of curiosity in terms of, can I work this into my practice in some way, shape, or form? Now, unfortunately, I wasn't able to get the big book that comes with it, although it does have a little guidebook. This is also what the back of the cards look like. That has quite a bit of information. So hopefully this will be enough to get me going with this practice and this process. If the book ever comes back on the creator's shop, I might go ahead and pick it up. Again, I'm gonna flip through just a little bit as we're sitting here chatting about it. This again is another very large deck, and what I'm hoping to do with this one is to use it in more of a sort of, I guess, magical sense. I don't know. It doesn't feel like a tarot to me. I get that there are tarot associations. Granted, I have not worked with it. It is a tarot and oracle, so there's more than just the tarot associations. And I think that because of the sigils and because of the artwork and the lack of titles, this deck to me feels more like a tool and less like a tarot deck. So I'll be interested to see how this whole process turns out with this, because I'm going to be using this one in a little bit of a different way. I don't really intend to do readings with it. What I intend to do is to pull it out, to pull a card, most likely a single card, and then to let that kind of sit as like an energetic focus. Now, what I might do, again, I'm still fleshing all of this out, but what I might do is pull additional tarot cards in to get a reading around that energy, but I don't feel like the tarot reading is going to come from this deck. I feel like it's going to come from whatever decks I end up including with it. but it feels potent and it feels energetically alive. And so I want to tap into that. And I'm not sure where that's going to sit in my practice for me, if that's going to be something that I will work with creatively or something that I will work with more in a sort of manifestation kind of idea where like I'm looking at trying to cultivate certain energies, or if it's going to end up falling into a particular category for me or a particular type of work. I don't know where this deck is going to sit at this point, but I'm curious enough to give it a go. I definitely do want to work with the sigils. I showed this deck and talked about it quite a bit with my members, and I have some feels about some of the things about it, but we'll see how it ends up working, what I end up doing with it. I think the artwork is absolutely gorgeous, and sigils are something that I'm familiar with, but I haven't worked with since I was like in my 20s. So that's over 2 decades ago. So this is definitely not a new practice for me, but it would be more like reinvigorating a very, very old, long forgotten practice. I didn't do a lot of sigil work back in the day either. So it's never been something that's been a huge part of my way of being in the world, but I'm curious about the sigils. But really what I want to tap into is the energetic potency that I feel like comes through this deck. And I want to see what that's about. And I want to see how I can work with that, where I might be able to incorporate that into my life, what it can teach me. Because that's really a lot of what these decks are that I'm going to share with you today. It's really about what can these decks teach me. So the Alchemical deck can teach me about alchemy. This deck might teach me something about sigils, sure, but I feel like it's also going to teach me about energy work. And I don't know why that's what comes through for me for this particular deck, but it's just where it kind of sits. You know, it feels like one that's going to be wonderful for incorporating into my work, just in a general sense, into my life, and then kind of wait and see where it shows up, see how it ends up fitting into the work that I'm doing. So this one is a curiosity, but again, like the alchemy deck, I'm kind of just looking to see what it has to teach me and what it's going to share with me throughout the year. And again, I'm going to be working with this one very slowly. I'm not going to like set any particular rules around it, just pull a card whenever I feel like I want to engage with the energy, and maybe just leave it out for as long as it feels applicable or potent, and then just move along when it feels right. So a lot of this is going to be very like feeling based for me, where it's going to be not scheduled, you know, not in alignment with a particular season or energy or anything like that. It's just going to be when stuff feels like it's time to change, when I feel like I'm ready to get into these, when I feel like I'm ready to step into a new alchemical card. That's how I want these to go, very much intuitive, no plans, no structures, just engaging with them whenever it feels right. So another deck I want to spend some time working with this year is the Magickal Botanical Oracle. And it's interesting to me because this is just a botanical oracle, and I have lots of them. But here's the thing with this deck, and I think I've talked about it before. I do not get this deck based on the artwork. However, I'm a huge fan of Christopher Penczak's work. I have their books were some of the first that I read decades ago when I was just starting to explore the idea of like living a magical life. And so those books were very foundational in my own practice in that way. And so when I saw that it was written by that particular author, I knew I had to have it, if for nothing else, because I wanted to read the guidebook. So I got it. I looked at the cards and I'm like, I think the artwork is beautiful. I feel like there's a little bit of maybe the kind of blend between the alchemy and the like what we have going on in the Nameless one. It's just an interesting sort of blend of things on this deck. And I'll be honest, like I do not get it. Just looking at the cards, I don't get it. They don't do anything for me other than like to really appreciate the beauty of the deck. And I'm not trying to like poo-poo this deck or anything. I'm just saying that this is one of those cases where if I were to pull this deck out and to throw it into a reading, I don't think I would get anything out of it. I've had played with it a little bit with some pairings and things like that, and I still feel like I've just completely missed the boat on whatever the potential is of this deck. So one of the things that I want to do this year with this deck is to get into it, to actually sit down and properly read this guide guidebook. Like I said, I'm a huge fan of this author's work, so I'm really excited to actually take some time to read this one and to get into what is going on in these cards. So there's a lot about working with the plants, working with the cards themselves. There are associations in here, and then we go into cards themselves. And I do like that we have the planet association and elemental association. So I feel like maybe I want to do some slow work with this, where maybe I just pull a card every now and then, again, sitting in that intuitive space and just using it as a draw for the time being, and then really read the guidebook and get into what it says. I could pull some tarot around that too if I felt called to, but I don't feel like it's something that I necessarily need to do. I just want to spend some time getting to know this deck, because it's one that I think is really beautiful and I'm really excited to work with it, but I don't get it. So it's gonna require me to put some effort in. And I think the thing is, like, I have lots of botanical decks, right? Like a ton of them. And so this one, I'll be honest, needs to have something else just besides the pretty artwork. It needs to resonate or offer something potent in a way that is usable for me in order for me to keep it as part of my working deck collection, because otherwise it's just like a bunch of pretty images. And while I have absolutely no problem keeping decks just simply because I enjoy the artwork, this would not be one that I would consider in that category. Right? Like, I have some decks that I'm like, they're super beautiful and I never work with them. This one right here, perfect example. I very, very rarely actually use this deck, but I keep it, and it's almost like a collector. It's something that I have because I really appreciate the artwork. I do look through it, and it's one that I will probably always have. But for just a botanical oracle, because I have so many others, like, this is not one that I'm just gonna like keep on hand just to admire the artwork. As beautiful as the artwork is, I want to know what's going on in this deck, and I want to spend some time getting to know it, because surface level, I don't get it. And that's cool. Sometimes I need to sit with a deck, sometimes I need to spend some time with it in order to really understand where it's coming from. And then at the end of the day, it may not actually sit in alignment for me, and that's totally cool too. But I feel like if I don't at least give it a try and read the book, then I'm always gonna wonder. So I also have a few decks that I've had for quite some time in my collection that I want to get back into. I have the whole collection of decks by this particular creator. I've just pulled out the Ophidia Rosa because it's the deck that I'm like doing the most in-depth work with. Like, I have a whole journal. Here's the backs. I think I've shown this deck many, many times on my channel. I have a journal that I am currently working through or creating, where I am writing poetry around this deck, and that's kind of how I've been engaging with the cards. I've been going through them in order. I mean, clearly I shuffle, use the deck and all of that. So in the journal, I just go through the deck and find the card that's like next on the list. But I'm writing poetry around this deck, which is not something that, like, I'm not a poet. It's not a thing that I do or that I'm very good at, but it's where I found my connection with this particular deck. So I'd like to get back to that practice and hopefully maybe finish that journal in this year. I've been working on it for like 2 or 3 years now. So it's been a very long and involved process, but I am starting to near the end. So hopefully I'll be able to finish that up. But also, I want to work with this whole collection of decks that I have from this creator, because I feel like they don't get enough time and attention in my practice. And these decks for me are really fantastic for encouraging me to slow down. And that is definitely an energy that I need in my life, because I go 90 miles an hour a lot of the time. I mean, when I crash hard. Or I crash into a video game for like hours on end. But I do tend to just kind of go until I burn out. And then I kind of like have to take a step back, because now I'm depleted and I have nothing left to give. And these decks, for whatever reason, the whole collection of these decks from this creator really help me to stop and to slow down. And that's definitely an energy that I want to cultivate in 2024. So working with these decks in particular, again, there's a whole selection of them. I've just pulled this one out as kind of like the example deck, right? I want to incorporate more of these into just my everyday practice, into my everyday life, because of what they encourage me to do, because they help me to just stop, to take a breath, to slow down. And that's definitely an energy that I need to incorporate. To be honest, like probably daily, at least some point in the day, I need to like stop and take a breath and slow down, because otherwise I just go until I burn out, and then that's not good for anybody. So I'd like to bring these decks more back into the forefront of my practice to help me engage with that energy, to help me work with that energy. Because sometimes when I wrap it around a tarot deck, then I feel like I have a tool, I feel like I have some place to direct that energy. And so it helps me to engage with it. Whereas if I just say, oh, I need to slow down, right? I need to take 5 minutes every day to just breathe. That's really easy to say, but I don't always necessarily do it. So having a deck or a tool or something that I can kind of like direct that focus in, or sort of like wrap it up, it's like a talisman, right? These decks become my talisman for that. And it encourages me to do that, and it helps me to not only remember to do that, but also provides me with something physically to do, right? And sort of an active way to slow down, which sounds really counterintuitive, but it works. It works if you've got the right decks for it, I think. At least it does for me. Okay, so real quick, let's talk about journaling. I mean, is it gonna be quick? Probably not. I am going to be sort of switching up how I am journaling this year. I tend to do that a lot, sometimes more than once in the same year. I did stick pretty closely with what I was doing in 2023, like for the majority of the year. And in 2024, I'm definitely going to be switching things up to do something a little bit different. I'm going to be doing some digital archiving, not necessarily journaling. All my journaling is going to happen in paper, but I'm going to be using GoodNotes for digital archiving. I'll get into that when I do my January wrap up, because it's really hard to like discuss without showing things, and I don't want to drag all that out right now. What I do want to talk about is the actual journaling that I'm going to be doing. I have this whole gorgeous collection of journals. Look at these. Oh, from the Creeping Moon. So that's the same creator that did the Anima Mundi Tarot. And I purchased, I think, all but 1 or 2 of their selection of journals. And I have a specific purpose for each and every one. We'll start with this little one on top. This is a little forager's field journal, and it has like these little location, habitat, species, recipes, and notes. It has this little layout for every single page. It's gorgeous paper in these journals. The quality of these journals is phenomenal. It has these little, like, you know, you're supposed to like go foraging for plants and whatnot. I am going to use this as a way to forage through my own collection. So every so often, again, looking at practices that aren't necessarily scheduled. And I think that's because of the thing that I'm doing in my membership, which is very scheduled. It's a whole adventure. It's a whole journey, right? And so everything else that I'm doing, I want it to be really free flowing, so that really I'm not impeding on that, because I want that to be my main focus. I do also want to have the opportunity to just do some sort of in the moment things as well. And so I picked up this little forager's journal because I'm going to use it to forage through my own collection. And so I thought it might be fun to just like randomly pull cards, probably from my Oracle collection if I had to guess, but I might use tarot, and to just like journal about the cards. So kind of like a daily card pull, but I'm not going to do it daily. It's just a place to explore cards, one card at a time, in a very random sort of foragey kind of way. So the main journal that I'm going to be working with in 2024 is this little adventurer's journal, which I have already started, and I'll just show you the first few pages in it. This is my Fellowship of the Weavers journal. So this is where I'm recording the entire adventure that we're doing together. I am going to be archiving cards and things like that digitally. Again, I'll get into that in January. But you can see here that I've got just a few things set up. I've started at this point writing the story, and then I need to actually record my reflections for our first pull. I am doing just a little bit of decoration here and there, but primarily this is going to be no card images, most likely. I won't say not 100%. Most likely no card images. I'm recording all of those digitally in GoodNotes. This is just going to be for some doodling, some reflecting, maybe a little bit of, you know, collaging here and there, but primarily I want it to be focused on the adventure and the story that I'll be writing as I go through the adventure. This is going to be my main journal for the year, where I'm just recording all that I'm doing in our tarot adventure in the membership. This little journal is a beautiful lined notebook, and I am going to be using this for just basically all of my other tarot readings. So anything else that I do a tarot reading around, I think that what I'd like to do with this one is to do more of that annotated tarot reading, because that was a practice I did, I think in August, I want to say, where I took my monthly medicine and I annotated every reading that I did, which means I did my initial reading and then I went back and added and annotated, right? Like you annotate a book, I annotated my readings, and I got so much out of that practice. It's not something that I can do every day. It's maybe not even every week, but it's something that I would like to do with those bigger readings that are kind of like a little bit speaking to more larger things or stuff that I'm continuing to work through. And so I'm hoping to kind of just have a play with this in this space, and to, you know, allow it to just be whatever it is that it needs to be, wants to be in the moment. This is also great because it's not tied into my practice. It's not tied into anything seasonal, or like there's no expectations around this. It's just whatever reading I'm doing and however it is that I want to engage with it. So sometimes that might be annotated, sometimes that might just be straight up writing with no decoration or anything. And that's really what I need, and something that I think I've been missing in my practice for, you know, probably a couple years now, is just a place where I feel like I can just do whatever I need to do and it doesn't matter, and like I don't have to show it if I don't want to. So it's kind of just like creating a little bit of safe journaling space for myself. Then I have this beautiful book, which is actually a sketchbook, and this was the book that I bought originally to do all of my extra tarot readings in. So I bought this one to use instead, because once I got this one in, I realized that this book has the most thick, glorious watercolor paper in it, which is fantastic for art and things along those lines. Not so great for like writing and trying to record tarot readings and like add like annotated layered things into it, right? Because the pages are already really, really thick. I have a bit of an idea for this one. I'm not going to share it right now. It's going to be repurposed for that, and it's going to be really fun. So outside of, you know, the main thing that I'm doing, which is the fellowship journey and my membership, that's kind of my plans for my tarot practice overall, is just to kind of really focus in on that practice itself, and then to just let everything else kind of weave itself in and out and around that. I don't really want any schedules or deadlines or anything. I'm not going to be, you know, engaging in any other studies besides just dipping my toes into alchemy, working with those few decks that I talked about, and then really just focusing on that kind of more free form journaling and tarot reading, and just letting things be a little bit more in the moment and a little bit less structured. I feel like because I have so many other things going on and so many other projects that I'm working on in all these various different ways, shapes, and forms, that I need my tarot practice to not be homework, right? That's really, really important to me. I say that to my members all the time, like all the stuff that we do, it's not homework. And I don't want my tarot practice or my journaling or anything like that to turn into homework, or the studies. Like when the studies start becoming homework for me, that's not really the energy that I want to engage with them. I mean, I've joked about how like I love to write papers and stuff like that. That's a different kind of thing. To me, that's not this, like when I talk about like it being homework, like it's math homework, right? Like it's homework that I do not want to do because somebody is making me. And I get very like inner teenagey angsty about it. So I'm not going to do any dedicated studies. I'm not going to like set any real goals. I just want to focus on doing the tarot adventure in my membership, and then letting the rest of my tarot practice just kind of flow in and out and around that as I need it to, as well as all of my journaling, because that's really important as well. So that's what I've got going on, kind of my thought process and all those good things. I would love to know what you're planning to get up to in 2024 with your tarot practice, or just, you know, your life practice in general. Definitely let me know in the comments. And as always, you'll find links for everything I've shown here in the description box of this video. Thank you so much for hanging out with me today, and I look forward to sharing with you again soon.